Thank you. We got we got to have 5 to know a quorum. Let's put on the computer glasses and show my age here.
We have 7, so we are good to go.
Okay. I guess we'll go ahead and get the script out of the way. As a preliminary matter, this is Curtis Smithson, Zoning Advisory Committee Chair. Permit me to confirm that all members are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. John Catino, not here. Ted?
Barker Oaks here.
Elise? I don't see her. Ron?
Here.
Sundar?
Sundar Subramanian, present.
Madhu?
Madhumita Chandrasekhar, present.
Mary Larson Marlowe?
Mary Larson Marlowe is here.
Rachel?
Rachel Rawson is here.
And if I understand correctly, our new members are James and Disha. I don't see them either. But apparently we have a quorum. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. John Gelsich.
John Gelsich, present.
Okay. Good evening. This is the open meeting of the Zoning Advisory Committee. It's being conducted remotely. Consistent with the recently signed an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, this act includes an extension until April 1st, 2022 of the remote meeting provisions of his March 12th, 2020 executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. The new law has 2 major parts. First, the new law allows public bodies to continue providing live, adequate alternative means of public access to the deliberations of the public body instead of holding meetings in a public place is open and physically accessible to the public. Adequate alternative means may include, without limitation, providing public access through telephone, internet, or satellite-enabled audio, or video conferencing, or any other technology that enables the public to clearly follow the proceedings of the public body in real time. Second, the new law authorizes all members of a public body to continue participating in meetings remotely. The open meeting law's requirement that a quorum of the body and the chair be physically present at the meeting location remains suspended. For this meeting, Zoning Advisory Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom app that's posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the ZAC agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be broadcast by HCAM through one of its many channels or platforms. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating via video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Ground rules are now turning. First item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each item on the agenda. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Not every agenda item will feature public comment. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. The chair will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses. Once the chair has a list of all public commentators, I will call on each by name and afford 3 minutes for any comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Our first agenda item is, from what I understand, came from Chamber of Commerce through the Planning Board, passed down to us to discuss, is the increase of maximum gross floor area in the industrial A district from 50% to 80%. I understand there was a warrant already added for this item.
Through the chair, the planning board, so this was received, this draft article was received by the planning board right before the planning board meeting. So they put it onto the agenda to discuss and decided that there's still time for Zach to take a look at it. So it doesn't necessarily go through the same process that other articles will go through, but it's going to be very similar. So they think Zach has enough time to review, and then once Zach makes a recommendation to the planning board, we can advertise the hearing if that's the route that Zach and the planning board want to take. And if not, then planning board still has the ability to remove it from the warrant. So they want Zach to discuss it now and provide a recommendation to the planning board. So I think that covers everything.
Okay,
Through the chair.
yes, Mary?
Yeah, so just adding on to what John was saying, several different outcomes. One is that, and this obviously will be discussed, because with the chamber representatives here. But one is that we go through our process and we would recommend to the planning board to take it forward to the ATM. A second possibility would be that we feel that it needs a little bit more work and therefore we would like it off this year, but we would potentially recommend it for next year's ATM. And then the third possibility, of course, is that we've reviewed it and we don't like it for whatever reason. And then we would recommend to the planning board that it not be recommended for approval at town meeting.
Okay. I guess Ron is our chamber representative. I don't know if you want to present.
Yeah, Curtis, the main issue here is that the type of work that's being conducted in the industrial zones is radically different from what it was 10 or 20 years ago, which is where a lot of these bylaws are in effect. And so there are not as many big office buildings going in with 2, 3, 4 story office buildings. It's more 1 or 2 story industrial manufacturing type things. And the gross floor area current restriction at 50% essentially reduces the desirability of putting a 2-story structure in, because you get the same GFA as a 1-story building. So as you all know, there's a lot of activity on South Street right now. I mean, Lycan's in the final stages of a TIF. They're looking to expand dramatically there. The 52 South Street sold recently. I mean, there's just a lot of activity that's happening there. And we're hoping that we can take advantage of that. And to really get into more of the details of that, I see that Scott Richardson, also from the chamber, is on the call. And I'd like to see, Curtis, if you would be willing to ask Scott to speak on this issue.
Okay, well, allow Scott to go ahead and present whatever data he would like to.
Mm-hmm.
Just identify yourself and your address.
Sure. Sorry for the poor lighting. Yeah, it's Scott Richardson. I actually live in Upton, but I was a resident of Hopkinton for about 32 years. I do sit on the Hopkinton Chamber of Commerce, past president and current chair of their membership committee. And my office, we have an architectural office that's been in Hopkinton for, I don't know, probably nigh on 23 years or so. I also, when I lived in Hopkinton, I did sit on the zoning advisory committee. So I'm familiar with the process and the good work you guys do. So and again, I think this is a kind of an add-on to the parking increase or decrease, I guess, if you would say, in the parking requirements that we've chatted about before and that you guys have received fairly well. So again, as Ron is mentioning, the type of construction and type of use that is needed and is in high demand on South Street and in other areas across Metro West and Eastern Massachusetts, for that matter, are buildings that do not require a lot of staff, if you will, whether it's a life sciences use or even a corporate use or industrial, kind of a combination, life sciences, research and development, and so on. So again, the bylaws that are in a lot of these towns, including Hopkinton, were originally put together to accommodate typical office buildings that required more parking than they do today, and also with an eye towards trying to balance the open space with the building size. So again, an increase in the FAR will allow more square footage to be built on a given piece of property in the industrial sector, but also with the increase in the heights that we enacted several years ago to 3 and 4 stories, we would be looking at, hopefully the footprints would be about the same size, but again, be able to increase the size of the building on a vertical basis. Thereby, again, you're increasing the asset of the property and also increasing ultimately the commercial tax base for the town. So it kind of runs in tandem with the reduction in parking, as well as trying to make these properties, most of which are fairly tired and only have 1-story buildings on them and are underutilized, more attractive for development, more intense and more attractive development. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, so we're talking about the gross floor area. So basically the lot coverage is not going to change. I think that's 40% if my feeble memory serves me. So basically we're talking about going vertical over spreading out and covering more of the property.
I believe so. Yeah, I think the lot coverage percentage remains, but the floor area ratio increase enables you to build a larger building, which would again ultimately be more vertical construction.
Are there height restrictions on the industrial A?
Yes, there's 3 stories on the west side of South Street. And I believe it's 4 stories on the east side of South Street. I don't recollect if we increased the height in the Elmwood Park district or not, but others may have that reference handy.
Okay, yeah, I scanned through the zoning bylaw today, and I know I saw a 60-foot reference for, seems to be, I recall it was like the street facing side. And then I'm not sure I saw a height restriction on the rest of it, but I didn't delve too deeply into it, but we're not really, I guess, an increase in the gross floor areas, like I say, not going to have any more effect on the site because we're still limited to the 40% plot coverage.
Yep.
So we just have a taller building permitted.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get to 80% with 3 floors and 40% coverage? I guess that would be one question.
Sure, you can. Absolutely. Okay. Yep. You can go more, but we're only talking about 80%.
So to me, if we have a height restriction, I don't know that the increase in the gross floor area is going to affect us too much as far as something to be detrimental. I guess anyone else that wants to weigh in?
I have a question.
Yes, Ted.
And maybe I'm having trouble wrapping my head around it. So this proposal does not allow, or is not asking for expanding more over the lot. And it's not asking to supersede current height restrictions. How do you make a bigger building than is currently allowed if we don't change both of those? We can still do that and go up to 80%. Do you understand my question? I mean, maybe we can.
Yeah.
So it seems like if we want a bigger building, we need to rewrite a bylaw that either says you can expand more over the lot or build it higher than we currently do. This is a third restriction?
Yeah, no, this is, so basically currently on any parcel, you're limited. If you say you have an 80,000 square foot parcel, you are only allowed to build 40,000 square feet. Now, whether that's a one-story building or two-story building or three-story building is up to whatever is being developed, and also what open space you need to have, and also the parking ratios. Going to 80% allows you to build a 64,000 square foot building, which would most likely be taking advantage of the increased height on South Street. Keep in mind that nobody other than 239 South Street has taken advantage of the 4-story option ever. Really, most of the buildings along South Street, as you know, are either 2 stories, or most of the older buildings are 1 story. So you'll be able to actually build take advantage of the height with the added square footage. So you are building more square footage, but it all kind of plays together, if you will. So
So if I may then, Scott, our goal of encouraging businesses by raising the height didn't succeed. And I guess it's because you couldn't raise the height because there was also this 50% of lot area rule.
So they do kind of work together. So far, nobody has come in and said, oh, great, I want to build a 60-foot tall building along, between South Street and 495 because this is my use and this works really well. So far, nobody has taken advantage of that. It's there if in case somebody comes along and has the ideal site or puts together parcels that it would be conducive to do that. What we're trying to do is basically say you can build more square footage on the existing parcels, and whether you go to 1 story, 2 story, or 3 stories, as long as you comply with the setbacks and lot coverage, you're enabled to build more square footage. Now, your question is, when will somebody take advantage of this? We do not know. Certainly, as we all know, there's, the parcels that have these older industrial buildings are, they're tired, but they seem to be, they rent out, quite often for different uses. But we're hopeful that, again, with this added zoning advantage, we will see more preferred development from developers. But
okay,
4 years.
So my initial reaction, Scott, is I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't know that it is solving a problem because no one has stated that this is a problem, unless I missed that part of what you had to say.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is more towns are increasing their floor area ratios. There's portions of Ashland that are encouraging development, and their FAR is now 2.0, which, for certain areas, depending on what you want to do, certainly is an incentive for any developer. Based on the industrial properties that we have, we felt that 0.8 was a reasonable increase and not anything that would seem excessive to the town, but also, again, provide the potential for increased and more valuable property.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so it sounds like it would just open us up to be a little bit more marketable if we have the opportunity for people to do that. Because if you're a smaller lot and you can only do 10,000 square foot, and you wanted to go to much more, you can't really go up because you're already limited.
So again, Ted brings up a good point. As you enact these things, there's a sense of maybe not really frustration, but okay, we've done these things. Where are the developers? But I think all in good time, and certainly if this makes sense to you guys and to ultimately a town meeting, then it's just another advantage that the town can bring to bear as developers and other and businesses are looking to relocate or expand in our community. Sorry.
Can I ask another question that I think you touched on, Scott? May I, Curtis?
Sure.
So if you can't, again, and I know I just said some of this, but I'm getting to, I think, another question. If you can't make it longer and wider, because we already have green space requirements.
Mhm.
This means if you want to expand floor space, if it's not already less than 50%, you got to go higher. So we're talking going to 3, 4 stories, whatever our height allows. What types of businesses want 4 stories? Because I thought I heard you say that we are moving towards more industrial and less officey. What type of business is an industrial, but I want 3 stories?
Yeah, it's a good question. And what we're seeing in a lot of our projects is a mixture. You're looking at some research and development space that sometimes requires taller ceilings. So a building may have a portion of it being 2 stories with offices above, and then maybe the adjacent part next to it is 3 floors. So again, the market's evolving. I think the office market will still be there, but again, I think in order to provide more options, it helps us do that. So I don't know if that answers your question. I hope it does.
No, I think it does. I was thinking initially more industrial means more warehouse type stuff. And I wouldn't imagine warehouses would want 3 stories. They want to go, cover more land, but.
They do, but have you ever been in an Amazon 4-story, 4 million square foot warehouse?
No, I have not. Do we have space for one of those Amazon monstrosities?
Yeah, that's not what we're talking about here, though. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this sounds to me like it would just give much more opportunity. You could have a 60-foot high manufacturing bay if you needed it for equipment. And then a portion of the building could be, 4 stories of office space to support the manufacturing part. So
Correct.
It would just give you a lot more opportunity for a lot more flexibility in design and being able to fit something on the site than the 50% would.
Hey, Curtis, can I ask a question?
Yes, Rachel.
So, you mentioned Ashland. The buildings that I've seen go up in Ashland are these cube storage places, those storage facilities. Is that considered an industrial use? And is that one of the possible types of businesses?
I'm sorry. Yeah, through the chair. Again, we're not talking about changing any of the uses that are allowed under your current bylaws. That's a separate discussion. All we're talking about, again, is increasing the opportunity for a building owner, a company, to increase their square footage allocation. So the uses are defined in the current bylaws. And actually, I think storage units are not allowed in the town. So there was an application for one on South Street, and that was denied.
Okay, thanks.
Mary, do you have your hand?
Chair, Curtis? Yeah. Thank you. I, certainly am in support of this. I just wondered if you, the chamber, have any additional data on other towns in the area. And this primarily would be for the purpose of explaining it at town meeting.
Yeah.
It's always useful to have that kind of data for the presentation at town meeting.
Sure. I think we can put that together like we did for the parking.
That would be great.
Sure.
Curtis, can I share my screen?
It would be up to John, I think.
So, Mary, is this the kind of thing you're looking for? Did this chart come up?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was on mute.
Yep.
And yes, this is exactly what we would be looking for, because that'll be very helpful. Even if we don't publish it in the town meeting handouts, it's something that Gary can speak to at the meeting.
Yeah, and Ted brings up a perfect point, which is the chamber is not recommending that we increase the lot coverage on this thing, because we don't want a lot more buildings in the spaces. But if you look at the current 50% gross floor area, the one-story structure, there's really no change in it. But it's when you get to the second story or the third that you really get a combination of a lot more square footage on the 2 stories versus the 1 story. And that's the major difference that's coming across here.
This is extraordinarily helpful.
Yeah, I thought that had been sent out. Hadn't you sent that, Ron? Previously?
Yeah, so that would be good support to include with what we would send back to the planning board, I would think. John, what is our next steps here? Do we need to, anybody, start any more discussion? Do we need to vote on considering it or sending it on to planning? Or
So if Zach is done discussing this, they can take a vote to recommend planning board hold a hearing, because I guess it's already been added to the warrant. So I guess the vote can be keep it on the warrant and hold a hearing.
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to the planning board that they increase the gross floor area to 80% from the current 50%.
So point of clarification, planning board's not making this change. They're just holding hearing on a town meeting article. And then town meeting would vote to make that change. So I think the motion needs to be that Zach recommends planning board hold a hearing on this.
So move.
That's probably sufficient.
we have a second?
Mary Larson Marlowe, second.
Okay. So I guess we need to vote.
Curtis, before we vote, could I just have one more discussion question for the group?
Yes. Sure.
At this point, I think I am fine. The building is not covering more land and we're not breaking any height rules that we already have and we're not changing use. But I'm just interested, can anyone think of a negative to this proposal? We've heard all the positives. Can we brainstorm potential negatives before we, and Scott, I worked with you on Zach, so I am asking you to help us think of potential negatives before we move on. Because you know this world much better than I.
I mean, nothing comes through the chair, nothing comes to me immediately. I think based on kind of the chart that Ron shared, you'd becoming more in line with other communities that are, again, trying to attract more commercial and preferred commercial development. So nothing comes to mind. If I think of something, I'll certainly let you know.
Yeah, that was my thought.
Oh, I'm sorry, Curtis. We keep speaking over each other. Go ahead. You're the boss.
I was just got to say, I mean, if they'd come in wanting to increase coverage from 40% to 80%, I would have an objection probably. But since our—
Sorry, I'm back through the chair. Sorry.
Yes, go ahead, Sandor.
Sorry. I was just going to ask, we had reduced the parking requirements for, in a previous session for certain certain zones. Does this change to 80%, which means technically there could be more offices, meaning more people working there? Would that in some fashion negatively impact the parking requirements? I mean, would this go in conflict with what we had decided a couple of sessions ago and voted in reduced parking for certain zones?
To me, it would put the onus on the developer and the architect to come up with something that still complied with all the regulations.
Okay.
In my experience with most developers, they don't want to build any more parking than they have to, but they also don't want upset tenants that don't have any place to park. So like I say, I think they're still gonna have to meet the requirements no matter what.
Through the chair. Oh, sorry.
So I was just gonna say, sorry, Mayor. I was just gonna say the parking requirements are a ratio. So the
Okay.
ratio would remain the same. It's not gonna, I mean, if they build a
Ah,
100,000 square foot building and then, now they're allowed to build a 200,000 square foot building,
I get it. I get
they're
it.
gonna
Go
have
ahead.
to increase the parking, in
Okay.
ratio.
It wasn't an absolute value. Got it. Got it.
Right.
Okay.
Through the chair, if I may, can I?
Yes.
Yeah, so first of all, yes, I think this proposal is, I don't see any negatives. I feel like it's a low risk and it can pass, but based on memory of what happened before, one possible objection that could come through during town meeting is when we tried to have a discussion on the zoning article where the height of the building was increased. There's a lot of, a few residents, I don't remember how many, some residents came forward and spoke about how increasing the building's height would mean there could be light and that could bother, that could travel farther and stuff like that. I don't remember the exact details. There were some arguments put forward when the height proposal came in. That may come back again with this perspective saying that now that you are increasing GFA, it means more people would want to come and increase stories, and that I'm just anticipating that. I don't think it should stop us from doing this, but I just, based on memory from what I heard previous few years before in town meeting, that could be one thing.
Okay.
Good point.
There's going to be some people that aren't going to like just about whatever we put out there. So
Yeah.
Yep.
take our chances. So I guess we have a motion. Do we get a second?
Yes, I seconded it.
Okay, that's right. So now we'll vote on whether to send this on to planning board to have a hearing. Guess we'll start with go around the room here. Sundar,
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Ted,
Tabarrok, yes.
I guess I have to ask the alternates vote. I guess I'm not.
So
Okay.
we've got 1, 2, 3.
We didn't have any alternates last time I was here, so.
No, I mean, we could have one alternate vote. I guess there's only one alternate. So yeah, I guess James can vote.
Okay, James? Oh, didn't have any sound.
I vote yes.
Okay, Elise,
Yes.
Madhu,
Yes.
Ron,
Ron Foisey, yes.
Rachel,
Rachel, yes.
Mary,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
and Curtis Smithson is a yes. So I guess we are unanimous to send this on to the planning board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guess number 2 on our agenda is to talk about our future work that Zach's going to accomplish this year. There are a few things listed. Mary and John and I met with
Gary.
Gary. I don't know why that escaped me there. About some things that we, from the planning board side, wanted to try to look at. Tree protection, we do want to definitely keep working on. I reached out to the community and urban forestry through DCR to see if someone could come in and give us a presentation on how to quantify and what we want to try to protect. I haven't heard anything back, but we do want to kind of get tree protection started, but it's probably not going to be a principal item, but we do want to try to keep the ball rolling on that. Conversion of residential property, and then the Airbnb and short-term rentals, which I understand aren't permitted at this point in time, but there is some desire within the community to look into that.
But through the chair,
Yes.
point of clarification on that. Airbnbs are allowed. They're just not a regulated use because they're not a principal use.
Okay. And then garden apartments and village housing and residential districts to help with our affordable housing stock, and to kind of, I guess, have a little bit more inventive use of some of the property, kind of go back to some of the older approaches to development, a little higher density, and then kind of dig into the open space bylaw. I don't know if anybody else has any other items we want to get included. I know Mary has a work plan. I don't know if you want to share that. We can kind of go through that to refresh our memory on some of the items we had talked about previously.
So I can go through it. I cannot share my screen due to my computer issues right now. But I have it in front of me and I sent it to all of you about an hour ago or so. And the items that are on here, I'm just going to go through, from start to finish because it's easiest that way. So this is not in order of priority necessarily. So the fire safety residential fire sprinklers, this is something that we're addressing in the subdivision rules and regulations, which is a planning board initiative, and it is not something that needs to go through town meeting. This is also residential fire sprinklers is currently not something that can be mandated in local zoning, but we can encourage it. And that is the way we're going to word it. And I imagine that when we have a set of items to review for the subdivision rules and regs changes that we're proposing, I'm going to suggest that we also forwarded it on to the zoning advisory committee members, because I think, more sets of eyes can be useful. Okay, so that's the first item on that list. Number 2 talks about the, increasing the affordable attainable housing. And so that is, that addresses the several different items, conversions of rental property, the possibly the village downtown, I'm sorry, not the downtown, village apartments and garden apartments, village housing, that's it, village housing. And so in our current zoning regs, we have several different bylaws that may be useful in terms of increasing the potential for affordability in our town. Then the third item is Airbnb or short-term rentals. By the way, we did discuss this about 3 years ago and put it on the back burner at that time because we decided it really wasn't a big issue in our town. I don't see any reason why not to bring it back up again. Because the way I'm looking at it, with Airbnb, yes, it's not an issue right now, but better that we address it before it's an issue than after it's an issue. So anyhow, there are a number of different links that are in this this work plan that is research based on what we did 2-3 years ago. So, okay, so some things that we haven't talked about recently, maybe don't need to. Subdivision lighting, street lights, wayfinding. I think that's something we're going to do through subdivision regs, or we'll at least, I don't know if we'll make changes, but we'll discuss it. So that doesn't have to be on the ZAC agenda. Minor site plan revisions. Oh, this was the authorization for the zoning enforcement officer for minor site plan revisions. We got those approved, didn't we? John, didn't we get those approved at town meeting last year? Or did they come off the list?
What minor site plan decision, changes?
Yeah.
No, which ones?
I think that there was the, the dormers.
That
You know-
wasn't site plan. That was, I mean,
Minor site plan changes. Okay, it
no,
wasn't.
so I think
Yeah.
what we were talking about with minor site plan is things like fences and trying to think of other examples right now. I think the impetus was really the fencing.
Okay.
And stuff like that. But
Okay,
those-
I left that on here then. And I added some notes about fences. Because you're right, that was a different thing we got approved for the zoning enforcement officer to be able to make approval, without taking it to ZBA, I think, on some other things. Okay. Number 6. This was a recommendation to review the OSLPD for potential changes, which, we obviously have discussed in the past year. And we have some notes here. And so that's one of the ones that you already mentioned, Curtis.
Mhm.
Number 7 is tree protection bylaw, which you already mentioned. And I don't have a lot of notes in here, but we certainly did discuss it. Number 8, stone walls. This, I have some things written up, drafted. We have not implemented any of them, and they were not specifically zoning changes, but we could move forward with the ones that are drafted, either in subdivision regs or some other places that John, you talked about. 9, streamlining the permitting process. I feel like this is something that we do on an ongoing basis, and it might not need to be listed here anymore.
Well,
But
is
that's
that- if I understood, Gary said that was something that a committee of the planning board was kind of working on. They might come to us for some guidance occasionally, but they were.
So through the chair, I think the discussion with the streamlining of the permitting process was, I'm going to get this wrong. I want to say it's chapter 43D, which is a statute in Massachusetts that allows for a streamlined permitting process to be established.
no,
I think
that's correct. And
I
that
think
we
we've
went
discussed
through
that.
that in 2019. We went through that a lot. It was
Yeah.
actually right around the time that you joined, John. Because I think we did some discussions before you were here and then some discussions after you were here.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty regulated process. And I think if I remember correctly, the discussion centered around like, is it going to actually be worthwhile in Hopkinton? Because there needs to be priority parcels that are identified. And then those priority parcels are really the only ones that are subject to this streamlined permitting. And then the way that it is streamlined is not that much faster than what our current process is. I think it was kind of nixed because it wasn't really going to be that big of a benefit compared to how we do things now, if I remember correctly.
I agree with that conclusion. And I think that we may want to just put this down at the bottom of our list of things that have been considered, but we decided not to pursue. And that, I don't know how you want to go through that process of taking it off our active list, Curtis, but that's up to you. But that's number 9 on our list right now. Number 10, parking requirement revised. This is one that we have done. So
It's already been checked off.
yay. Downtown overlay district is number 11. And that is a growth study committee recommendation. I also have put an asterisk next to all of the ones that have been recommended by the growth study committee as potential areas to investigate. And then some non-numbered ones which were kind of holding places. This is car wash, whether or not we want to add it to industrial A by right or special permit, not allowed currently. We did separate this from the downtown and eliminating car wash from the downtown zoning a few years ago. last time we discussed this, it was a low level of interest. Form-based zoning, this was more of a discussion and education process. So it's kind of a long-term education process on form-based zoning from John to all of us. Dark sky lighting standards and regulations, which we have not discussed for a number of years, but it has been on the long-term list. And it's a very contentious and complicated issue. But that's is certainly something that has come up before. And then protecting large tracts of private open space. We kind of put this on the back burner since this was part of the growth study committee discussions. And I don't know if zoning is the zoning advisory committee is the right place to do this anyhow. But that's, something to discuss. And then some older items that were recommended by the Chamber of Commerce increase the retail store square footage maximum and the industrial A, industrial B districts. And this is a larger item, is consider long-term development opportunities on South Street. We've talked about ways to encourage biotechnology, including the MRTA buses to South Street. Then the last item, definitions for zoning districts, create table of zoning allowed. So this is more of the administrative item and we've already taken steps toward that in terms of improving the usability of the zoning bylaws and how they're organized. And that's it. The rest, the gray items are simply our long-term record keeping of what has been discussed and votes taken on one way or the other and their outcomes.
Okay. I was going to say the form-based zoning. I know Ted and Gary were both interested in maybe taking a look at that a little deeper. I think Gary had said there was some property out by 495 north of Main Street that he thought that might be a good consideration. We could look into that a little deeper. The dark sky lighting, I before moving to Chicago, I was in the Guilford Branford area in Connecticut, where I think the dark sky initiative started in Branford. It's an interesting thing to get into. Lots of developers very unhappy about all the lighting maps and things they had to put together. So yeah, brings a lot of contention into some meetings when the neighbors show up. But if it's something that's of interest, we can certainly consider it. I think before we had our meeting with Gary and Mary and John to kind of go through things, I was going to have, like say, hoping to have tree protection get started here fairly quickly if I can get some input. That's something I want to kind of keep hammering on. And then the garden department and village housing, we may take a little deeper look at too. Is there anything that's not on the work plan or this list that we want to take a look at? Ron?
Curtis, one of the things that the Economic Development Committee, in meeting with Lane Lazarus and with John, we're talking about the downtown corridor. And with all the construction that's going to be going on next year, and we've got an opportunity to perhaps get a community consensus on what kind of a vision we would like for our downtown areas. We're trying to address affordable housing and a number of other issues that are out there. And rather than focus on zoning one by one, if we could start with a bigger vision of that downtown area and then come back to look at the zoning, whether it's conforming lots or density or other types of things, let's work off of the vision. And again, I don't know how that fits into where you're trying to go with this, but it kind of sounds, I'd rather have an updated vision of the downtown first, and then get the zoning that needs to happen in order to encourage that type of development.
Okay. Yeah, regarding downtown, I'm on the permanent building committee, and I think an RFI has already, or a request for interest has gone out for a public-private partnership for the center school property, to see if developers would be interested in using some of the excess property that's associated with center school as a way to get some funding for improving the center school and the property there. That might be, I mean, if they came back with something with like a village set up on some of the additional property back there, that might be something. I don't recall exactly when that's supposed to come back in, but it'd be interesting to see what they think would be profitable to come back with, or if we're have lost our minds thinking we can get somebody else to help us pay for part of the school development. But okay, any other additional items?
Hate to say it, but there are people who would like us to revisit having a solar overlay map.
Okay.
Through the chair, I will say that Zach is not beholden to anybody really outside of the planning board, and can choose to not take up items.
Yep.
Yeah, that seems like we kind of beat on that one a good bit previously. Not sure going back and beating on it some more would benefit us a whole lot, but we can keep it on the list, I guess.
And there's the mass housing choice initiative. Again, it's not really, I mean, it might be more of an administrative activity for Zach, because there's not a lot of choice in the matter of what needs to be done. But
that's the MTBA adjacent
yes.
voting.
So through the chair, if I can just speak on this one. Yeah, there's still some fleshing out of what that would look like in Hopkinton, but to tie it in with what Curtis said before, we had the meeting for the RFI for center school today, and it was mentioned there that along with other alternative permitting strategies, we are looking for possibly a two birds, one stone situation where we can redevelop the center school site while addressing the MBTA zoning increase on the same site. Because since we don't have this train station in town, we have the ability to split the district up and do half of it near the station and then half elsewhere. So if we could do, a little bit over by the station and a little bit downtown in a place that might satisfy the center school project, then might as well see if anyone wants to propose that.
Okay. Yeah, I guess if it wasn't adjacent, but you had a shuttle service or something set up, then you'd kind of meet the same, still be able to get to the station. Okay, if there's not anything else, I guess I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Through the chair, we have the minutes, January 25th.
Oh, yeah. Approval of number 3, approval of minutes of January 10th, 2022.
Is that the wrong date? I think it was the 25th.
personally.
you're right. January 10th. You're correct.
I'm just reading off the.
Yep.
I wasn't there. I watched the video. Everything looked like it was in good shape. Any other comments or changes that need to be made?
I'll move to approve the minutes as submitted.
Okay.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Vote on approval. Sundar,
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
James,
James Burton, yes.
Ted,
Yes.
Rachel,
Rachel, yes.
Madhu,
Madhumita Chandrasekhar, yes.
Ron,
Ron Foisey, yes.
Elise,
Elise, yes.
Mary,
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
and Curtis is a yes. Now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Second,
Second.
Ron second. Okay. Do we vote on adjournment?
Yes.
I've been away
I was
for
wondering that too.
Sundar,
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
James,
Yes.
Ted,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Madhu,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Elise,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
and Curtis is a yes. Okay, well, happy Valentine's to everyone.
Happy Valentine's Day.
And some time
Thank
to.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Happy Valentine's Day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.